LNG, because gas prices have just been on a tear, and the climate changes that we're seeing within different weather atmospheres that lead to these spikes in gas may not be going away anytime soon. Do you feel like you need to beef up that part of your profile? Like, how might you capitalize on that?
Well, today, Alex, we have 180,000 barrels a day equivalent of LNG production today, and very significant assets in Australia and what we talked about in Qatar. We are pretty bullish on what the outlook is over the course of the next decade and beyond, because we think gas has a major role to play in this energy transition, more than a bridge, a very long period of time going forward. So absolutely, we like the profile of LNG projects. They lower capital intensity in your portfolio. And again, we're a company that believes in global diversity. It just has to fit our cost of supply framework. And LNG today coming out of Qatar fits that very well, being the lowest cost gas in the world today.
Let's get to emissions for a sec. Your goal of 35 to 45% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. And I'm curious as to what kind of government incentives do you think that you...
Good morning. How's everyone today?
Hi, folks. Good afternoon. How are you, folks? This is the Marketplace Show, Reset and Jumpstart TV. This is Anthony Weeks, and joined with my colleague, both Linda Dorman and Yvette Wood. This is segment number 1 on health and wellness. Welcome to the Marketplace. Ladies, how are you doing today?
No complaints. Doing
great,
well.
Anthony. Great.
Anthony, you look especially radiant. I have to give you your what we call flowers nowadays, compliments that are now flowers. Radiant. You know why?
Am I like glowing? Am I glowing through the screen or something?
You're glowing through the screen. I love that color. That is so beautiful on you. I just have to compliment you on that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for the compliment. I don't do well at compliments, so I guess thank you so much for that.
Okay, well, we're going to work on that. You
guys look fabulous as always.
Well,
you know, looking. I'm going to return the favor. You guys are looking fabulous and radiant as well.
Thank you.
Well, we're feeling good. You know, we've had a really good week. You know, we're still moving through this whole COVID-19 response. Now we've got the Delta variant that's really spreading in different parts of the country, which only reminds us that we must follow the protocols for keeping safe and really being cognizant that we're not out the woods just yet. Wouldn't you say, Yvette?
Correct. By no way. And as the summer progresses and more people are coming out and with less masks, those variants are going to spread. So be vigilant, everyone, please. When you're in more than the presence of 30 people or so, wear your mask. I wear my mask anyway. Even though I'm fully vaccinated, I still continue to wear my mask.
And so do I. And wash my hands.
Yes.
And ask the question, are you vaccinated? You know, and it may be a little personal for someone if I ask that question, but hopefully they'll understand and I'll happy to explain. We're all in it together.
Absolutely. And hopefully they'll give you an honest answer. Sure.
And give an honest answer.
Now, wait a minute. I know you guys are all in agreement, one accord and all that good stuff, but I'm going to throw some stuff at you guys because like our audience, what you say sounds good, but I mean, what gives if the World Health Organization is saying the Delta variant, even though you're vaccinated, you still have to wear your mask. And then in the United States, the CDC saying, well, they dropped the mandate about wearing masks. How does, I mean, the two doesn't jive. Which one is it?
It's
This
where
little card right here is a big deal in your life. It means you've been vaccinated. You may have two. Let's see, can you get it in the camera here? I'm going to share that common sense has to prevail. Common sense. So wear your masks is our mandate. That's what we're recommending.
absolutely.
Now, I understand this new Delta variant is more easily transmittable. Okay.
Yes.
It is deadlier, right? And countries who have done very well, you know, for the past year and a half, are now all of a sudden their case numbers have now it's out of control. That people are dying. Is this the Delta variant? What's going on here?
Absolutely. It's the Delta variant. And some of it is still just plain COVID. One, because people did not get vaccinated and they did not follow the guidance of the World Health Organization or the CDC or your primary care doctor. It's really not optional, but we can't force it on people. You want to survive. You want to lessen your chances of having COVID or the Delta variant. You must be vaccinated. There's no in between with this, Anthony. It's very dangerous. And remember, the vaccine does not guarantee that you won't get COVID. It just guarantees that if you contract it, you won't die from it.
And we still have a lot of myths on top of all that. But hold on top of all of that, what Yvette said, we still have the myth that's out there. We still have health practitioners who are contributing to some of that myth as well. I know some health practitioners who actually themselves have not received the vaccine, and I'm kind of shocked about that. And then some who are great proponents. So there's a lot of mixed messages, a lot of mistrust, a lot of myths. And, you know, we can talk about this and put it into another show, but we've got an amazing guest for this show.
We want the public, yet we want the public to understand and comply when there's so many contradiction, inconsistencies out there. I mean, it's we all got to get on the same page, right? You know, because at the end of the day, you have the naysayers that saying, listen, I don't want to do this because this is not yet proven to work, right? Correct. But then you have the healthcare community conflicting each other. And it just doesn't make any sense. And it's enough. I know today's guest, Vicki Braxton, is going to focus on the mental health wellness. This is enough to drive you nuts.
Yes, it is. And the title of our conversation today is dealing with complex and compound and complex traumas. And can you imagine what we're all experiencing? It was a trauma for me to actually go forward with a decision to vaccinate my children at least 2 months after I received mine. Even I doubted. It was fine for me, but, you know, making that leap. But, you know, we've got a lot of conversation because our expert today is very steeped and very knowledgeable about dealing with complex and compound traumas. I mean, we've had a great conversation.
Let's bring her up and say hi to our guests this afternoon. Welcome, Vicki. Welcome, Vicki Braxton, to the show. Welcome to the Market Ratio Reset and Jumpstart, segment number 1 on health and wellness. Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday. Thank you, everybody, for having me. It's an honor, and I really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Well, we appreciate you. I know that you, Yvette, and I had, I think it was a therapy session. I don't know, but it certainly was a tremendous informational session for me. And I learned so very much, and I do that from all of our guests. But welcome to Reset, and as segment 1, which is our health and wellness program, Ms. Braxton, President and Chief Operating Officer of Sons and Daughters of Lowe's Island Incorporated. And eventually we're going to ask you, how'd you come up with that amazing name? But first, I wanted to share a little bit about who you are, and let's hop into the conversation. We got our program started off a little bit late, but let's just go as far as we can go. So you are an amazing trainer, customer service and life skills management expert, working with high-risk populations, underemployed and homeless persons, returning citizens, which are those who are coming out from the penal system. You've been in this training and teaching mode for over 20 years. and a professor at several of our local colleges, most recently Prince George's Community College in the great county of Prince George's County in Maryland. You have worked very extensively for our audience to know in the wellness and culinary arts and hospitality field in customer service training to these high-risk populations, which is terrific. I appreciate the fact that you not only gained all your experience, but you hold an undergraduate and master's degree in human service community, and you are a candidate for your PhD. Now that's just a brain buster as far as I'm concerned, and I applaud you with that, from Liberty University in Virginia. So you've worked with a number of foundations. We had a great conversation about super leaders last night. Just really curious around working with young people who are really about to fall through the cracks, and because of the compound and complex traumas that they have experienced in their young life, and some as moving into their young adult life, carry that trauma and then become victims of their own traumas in various life circumstances. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you very much, ladies. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I hope I can live up to that introduction. I just, whoo, that's a lot. But yes, I really enjoy. I am about to start my dissertation in community care and counseling with a focus on trauma. So I'm finishing up 2 of my regular classes now. So I'm really excited about that. You're never too old to go back to school and learn. I tell everybody, I don't want to date myself, but I'm just letting you know, you're never too old for that. I love being an adjunct at PGCC. Right now, I primarily teach in their P-Tech program, which is the program that they have in conjunction with a high school here in Prince George's County. So it allows the high school students to earn an associate's degree while they're still in high school. So I love that. I started teaching on the workforce side actually at PGCC, and then moved over to the credit side. So I'm excited about that. So real quick, to answer your question on how our company name came to be, Lowe's Island was the street that our family lived on in Sterling, Virginia. And so I actually am business partners with 2 of my sons. And when I was actually 3, sorry, one of them is a silent partner. But when we were trying to think of a name, I was like, well, what can we do? And it was no better name. And it's a great acronym. So we go by SDLI all the time, and it's a great acronym. So that's how I started. I have great family support in all my endeavors. And so I really appreciate that.
That's excellent. That's a great history. It's always good to know how names and what they mean to you. And you are pretty dynamic in the fact that you are a mom, and you're a mom to a large number, and have worked in the foster care system to better understand some of these complex, what we call the complex traumas, and compound and complex traumas. Can you share with Yvette and I a little bit, or me a little bit, around your experience in this field and some of the things that you have touched on? I know it's a very broad question, and we'll try to, filter it down into some specifics.
So first of all, I think trauma in itself is really defined according to the DSM-5, which is the diagnostic book that we use as clinicians, is exposure to an actual or threatened death, violence, injury, maybe a sexual violation, but it's more of a singular occurrence. So this occurred and now you're getting treated with it, whereas complex trauma is trauma that's prolonged or repeated. So you have more than one sexual assault. You have more than one violent attack. You have more than one person committing things upon you. And it can lead to a multiple range of symptoms, and indeed PTSD. I work with juveniles a lot. So when you're looking at traumatic stress and complex stress in that arena, according to the National Traumatic Stress Network, child trauma needs 4 different things. It needs to have exposure exposure, repeated deregulation, persistency, and functional impairment. And in essence, this is what trauma does. So I think there's a stigma, especially within the African American community, about Black juveniles, that they're bad kids. First of all, a lot of kids are not bad. They may do bad things, but they're not bad kids. And a lot of times we find that people who are entering the juvenile justice system, people that are homeless, people that have been denied food, are actually victims of trauma. So someone, for example, entering the juvenile justice system who robs people a lot, let's just say, they may have started stealing because they couldn't eat, or they may have started stealing because they may have a parent who's incarcerated and then another one on drugs. They may be the primary breadwinner in their house, especially in lower income communities. And so they're doing what they have to do to survive. Unfortunately, the law does not recognize, oh, you're doing what you have to do to survive. The law recognizes that you broke the law. So there really needs to, and I think people need to go into this with the mindset that not everybody's a bad person. They just happen to be in bad situations, which cause them to commit bad acts. And I think that's really important to note. What is happening now is a lot of cities that have large African-American populations are really working on diversion programs. So here in DC, for example, the Attorney General has a diversion program where he has police officers, members of the court system, school teachers, community members, clinical personnel. So he has a group of people before they sentence a juvenile to really take a look at the whole history of this person and see what kind of trauma that they had. So trauma also leads sometimes into PTSD, not all the time, but sometimes. And this is diagnosed more commonly in females than males. And that is because, that's because females are more likely to get help. Males more likely to be like, oh, I can handle it. I don't need no help. You know what I'm saying? But females are more likely to get help. And so that's why. And for it to be full-blown PTSD, you must have an intrusion of bad memories, maybe, or setbacks, or occurring surroundings may trigger you. So you can be driving in the car with your mom and see your uncle, and if your uncle molested you, all of a sudden you're triggered. It could be avoidance. So you're avoiding places that it happened, you're avoiding people, and it causes alteration in your cognition and in your mood. So you don't make good decisions. It leads to self-harming behaviors. You have suicide attempts. You have people that suffer from extreme depression. They participate in risky behaviors, most often a lot of substance abuse here as well. So they also become hypersexual sometimes. And so it's really, a person really needs to have a good clinical diagnosis before a plan can be developed in order to help them succeed. And so often that diagnosis will take a whole group of people working together.
And is that part of, I mean, that was excellent information, and it makes so much sense in how you have stair-stepped us through that type of, the traumas, the definition, and even example of a program. So what you're saying in that last comment is the diversion program then takes a look and brings in all the experts to walk them through identifying the social determinants of key risk behaviors, as well as mitigating the key risk behaviors that's now led to them being inside of the criminal system or the juvenile criminal system. So, wow. How do we get our hands around all of this? Now that's a big, giant question. Maybe that's just not fair on my part. What do you think, Yvette? Can you help me out in kind of bringing that down? I mean, how do you get your hands on all that? I mean, what kind of question is that? But it's what I'm thinking, because it's so much information.
I think, Linda, I would like to pose the question. Maybe Vicki can help us all understand. We know in our community of color that mental illness is taboo, correct? And we're dealing with this people with complex and compound trauma. So, Vicki, can you help us understand first how to communicate with someone who's suffered from complex and compound trauma? Because my first instinct would be, if you're yelling at me, I'm going to yell back at you. But I understand that that's not quite how I should handle that.
So, first of all, a clinician like you, Yvette, that might have a big staff, for example, of course, you're going to say, listen, some things you just are not equipped to handle, because as sometimes in community healthcare, which is done maybe in churches or community centers or sometimes at schools, everybody is not qualified to handle everything. So the first thing people need to learn to do is be an active listener, because you may think you can solve a person's problem immediately, but what caused one person to become depressed might cause another person to cut, might cause another person to have an eating disorder. So you really need to be an active listener. You also need to remember that these people are human. If you cannot act with humanity, then this is not the right field for you to go into. Because if you judge them, if you start saying, well, that's dumb, why would you make that decision? Or, oh, this person just don't have a clue, whatever. You really can't go into it having that mindset. I think also you have to remember that there is a level of ethical behavior you have to maintain. So you can't that you start having your emotions be involved really hard. So you can't, because this is a danger zone and this is how lines become crossed. And then the client becomes even more traumatized.
That's really important, because then what you're saying is you have a large number of clinicians and people who are in the community health field who need to examine the why are they in that field, and therefore how are they going to get the proper training, the training that you deliver and the training that I know that Yvette delivers in terms of dealing with this particular set of individuals with these compound and these complex traumas, kind of peeling off the onion, but being able to know as a professional your why in entering into the field is just as important as the education, as important as someone who is suffering from the traumas to understand how are they going to get the help that they need and making it a good relationship with their clinician. So do you work with, in that regard, with various professionals in terms of trying to walk them through how to adequately support their patients and their clients in this field? Because I would think it's a very daunting set of challenges that they face every single day.
Well, one thing that I can tell you is in all the training that I'm going through, still, the first thing that they drill into your head is that a clinician needs to know their limitations. So not every clinician can work with every population either. So if you're not trained in diversity, for example, then maybe there's some populations that you shouldn't be working with. And so that's a real thing. And so when I talk to people, I say, you need to know the limits of your staff, and the person who is in charge needs to be the one that says to the staff, listen, you need to come to me no matter what. As soon as something's not right, you need to come to me. So as soon as the client starts to get aggravated, as soon as the client becomes even more withdrawn, as soon as the client you start noticing the client has all of a sudden excessive substance abuse going on. So these are the things that advanced clinicians like Yvette really need to be made aware of by their staff, like immediately.
You said something in our conversation. I'm going to go back and just hold it. It was a therapy session for me. I came out of it feeling 1,000% better. But one of the things that you said, Vicki, was that even as a clinician, we have to understand how certain populations, particularly those who have been incarcerated, have learned a skill around manipulation and therefore continuously repeat and probably reinforces not only their own trauma, but now creates an environment where it's not conducive for them to get and gain the services they need to become truly healed, recovered, and move into some type of productive life. What can you speak to that?
Well, I think it's important to understand that manipulation in incarceration can sometimes be a survival skill. Because when you are incarcerated, it's every person for themselves. So you can't go in and say, oh, this person's going to be my friend, this person's going to be my friend, because what we trade on the outside financially, they trade on the inside may include sexual exploitation. It includes violence. They may have to give up, for example, their commissary. So manipulation is a technique they use to survive, to get other things that they want or they need. So when they come out, you don't just stop that behavior all of a sudden. So now you're out of jail, you get on the bus and you go, well, I'm not going to manipulate anybody anymore. No, because when you come out, you're broke. You need to make sure you're going into a halfway house or some other environment where you may not know people. You may not be close to family anymore. So you're still going to use that tactic sometimes to get what you want. And I think it's important for people to realize that you have to know what's going on with this person before you, quote unquote, become their good friend and give them everything that they want, because you may be doing more harm than good. So for an example, let's say a person's coming out of incarceration and you know that they were a drug addict and you know that they went through drug and alcohol abuse. Well, don't let them convince you to give them one beer, because that one beer, when they come out, might all of a sudden start that spiral down. But that doesn't mean they're not going to try to ask you like, man, come on, I can drink one, that's not going to hurt, or let me have one joint or whatever. So, you really, when you work with making sure that these people, your goal is that they don't engage in recidivism. So your goal is to make them be able to identify responsible choices and responsible behaviors so they do not become reincarcerated, which includes managing money. That includes understanding the point of being responsible, getting places on time, being honest, learning the skill of integrity so you don't have to always manipulate everybody all the time. Sometimes if you just ask for something and somebody tells you no, you can go, why? And they say, well, let's sit down and look at it. So let's look at why you just can't have that one beer. So why did you become incarcerated? Well, I beat somebody up. Well, when you beat them up, were you under any influence? Yeah, I've been drinking. Oh, so you beat somebody up when you were drinking, which led to you to be incarcerated. Now, how many years did you do? I did 5 years. So do you think that's a behavior we want to go back to? Do you want to go back and do some more time? So, but it's going to take time, because as they say, Rome wasn't built in a day, and neither will their integration back into society won't be built in a day.
That's really, that just takes my breath away and got my tongue, because I think it's the compound nature leads to such complex sets of issues that aren't just necessarily just the trauma, but everything else that circles the trauma. For those who don't know what the acronym PSTD means, can you explain, can you share that very briefly?
So it's post-traumatic stress disorder. And when most people think about PTSD, we only seem to think sometimes that it applies to veterans, which is absolutely not the case. Anyone that suffered a lot of trauma can end up with PTSD, especially if it's not treated in a timely manner.
Well, I see that, and thank you for that. I see Anthony is, Anthony, you came in. I was expecting you a few minutes, but this is a good subject. This is heavy, isn't it?
Yeah, the clock in the upper left-hand corner will help you to keep track of that. But yeah, great conversation. We do need to take a quick break, station ID break. This is the Marketplace Show, Reset and Jumpstart TV, broadcasting live on radio and WSDX Radio, also broadcasting on Tempo Networks Television, broadcasting on the Kalalu Network, broadcasting on La Mega Mundial, broadcasting on Caribbean Passport, and broadcasting across social media. This is segment number 1 on health and wellness. Our special guest this afternoon is Vicki Braxton, the president, founder, and COO of her company. We're having a focused discussion on mental health. We'll take a break. We'll come right back and continue the conversation after these messages. Thank you so much.
Small business is a part of all of us each and every day. It's where we eat, it's where we shop, it's where we go to meet our friends and colleagues. In the wake of COVID-19, our small business community desperately needs our help. We must do our part to help our local communities to once again thrive. We must focus our attention on the small businesses that are the fabric of our great nation. SureUp is a network of small business owners, their employees, and local consumers all working in unison to support each other. By creating incentives for consumers to think local before considering regional and national providers to fulfill their needs, we create local job opportunities and rebuild our communities. In addition, through AI-driven tools and machine learning, in just 5 minutes a day, SureUp assists business owners in improving their social media presence, which enhances their visibility among consumers and levels the playing field so that local businesses can better compete with large, name-brand online competitors. When local businesses leverage the SureUp platform, full-time and part-time employees, whether W-2 or 1099, are rewarded with a variety of voluntary perks and member benefit options. These include discounts on the things people do every day, access to low-cost, subscription-based telehealth and teletherapy, discounted prescription drug plans, connection to exclusive Prosper resources, and so much more. All for less than the cost of a cup of coffee each day. The Jumpstart Marketplace is here to support the health and wellness of individual employees, as well as the health of businesses in the local communities in which we live and work. We're all in this together, so join us as we reinvigorate our local community and improve the physical and financial health of working America.
Well, welcome back. We are very excited to have Ms. Vicki Braxton with us to talk about complex and compound traumas today. And we've had an outstanding first part of the program, and now we're going to go into the second part of the program and just really do a deeper dive, if that's even possible. And my co-host, Yvette Wood. You know, Yvette, you have seen so much at the bedside in this particular field. What are your thoughts on this entire conversation? It's so rich.
Thank you, Linda. It is. And we're talking about complex and compound trauma. And I'm not sure that some people really understand what that means. I mean, when you're looking at a human being, you're looking at an onion per se. We've got all these layers and all these events that have happened to us. And it's how do we deal with that? And then you have someone who's re-entering society from an incarceration. So, Vicki, my question is, can you help us understand, for instance, if I'm dealing with a juvenile who's been in the system, who may have been homeless, abused by mom, picked on or bullied because of their sexuality. Help us understand, what am I dealing with here? Because when I get them, they're coming to me fresh out of the facility, and I'm looking like, hi. But it's deeper than that. It's much deeper than that. And can you help us understand how Yvette would even start that mountain, chipping at that?
So as you know, this person is going to come with a myriad of issues. So they may have extreme anger. They may be dealing with eating disorder. They may be dealing with severe depression. They may have a personality disorder. They may have some type of other anxiety disorder. So right away, you know that, okay, this person has a lot of stuff going on, and we're going to have to actively listen and just try to go through it. So you have to try to build a rapport with them. And one of the things, especially working with teens or juveniles, is juveniles are pretty smart, actually. They're very in tune, and they're pretty smart with them, and they will be hard to it's hard for them to trust a new person immediately, especially if they've been through all of that. So you'll get the, I don't have to listen to you, and you probably don't really care about me, you're just trying to get your check. And I've heard, oh, you've never been where I've been, so you can't possibly understand. So again, it's about actively listening to them and then saying, okay, well, help me understand what you're going through. Walk me through your background. And eventually they'll begin to trust you. But this is a long process. And you will be tested as to how far you can be trusted. They will talk back to you sometimes. They will become very angry sometimes. I think the key word is that you have to try to diffuse the situation as much as possible. And when you can't, you need to disengage yourself and get help. So if you're taking on a child who's very, very angry, and maybe they get up and they begin throwing things, it may be hard for you to disengage, to, settle that child down by yourself. So you have to get help. You'll have to call security or somebody else. And also, a lot of these kids may have other health issues beside what's going on with them mentally that have to be dealt with too. So they may have juvenile diabetes. You have some that might come with some heart ailments or issues. And especially if they've suffered a lot of beatings. And you're just gonna have scarring from so many different angles. And it may take time for some clinicians to fully actually assess them. So the assessment is not going to be a quick process. Now, of course, I can say that in the work that I've done with juveniles, and the people who know way more about this subject than I do have said to me, you'll get the paperwork from the facility, but that doesn't mean anything, because maybe they only did what they had to do in the facility. So maybe they had to go to counseling and they barely participated. So it's only going to touch the surface. So really, it's like you're starting all over again, in trying to deal with them. And eventually, some may require some type of medication. Maybe once they get the right prescriptions or have the right type of medication, they'll begin to slow down, because oftentimes it's a combination of medication and therapy. So there are lots of different therapies. There's cognitive behavior therapy, there's EDMR, there's meditation therapies. So there are a lot of different therapies that you're going to have to use. And again, as a clinician, people have to understand that working with that population is not the same thing as it can get deep, but you have to, and just maintain your professionalism as well. So don't give them your home number to call you, if you have group counseling, say, hey, you were late for group, hold them accountable, hold them responsible. You have to come to group. Okay, now our session is over. And remember too, that some of them might be hypersexualized. So don't fall into that trap. Don't allow them to be inappropriate with you. The key thing is to set the boundaries immediately and stick to them, and they will come to respect you. So if you are setting boundaries, and let's say someone else they're working with does not, you will find that when they see you, they might be, oh, hi, Miss Wood, how are you today? Are you doing well? I did great on my English test. Where they're working with somebody else, and all of a sudden that person will say something to them, and they'll start using inappropriate language and everything, and you'll just be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. And what I do caution too is, if you're close to them in age, so let's say you're a new professional coming out, maybe you're 22, 23, never discuss inappropriate topics with them. Your personal life is off limits. Any type of sexual discussion about anything, off limits. Any type discussing with them whether or not, marijuana is legal in DC, but they don't need to know whether you smoke marijuana or not. That's not their business. They know they're not supposed to be smoking it while they're in recovery. So, I mean, it's going to take a lot of patience. It's not just someone can come in and they're going to sit in your office, and after 2 sessions, you're going to go, oh, I know what's going on with them. But they want to get better. See, this is the key. And it's about survival in our community. So especially in DC, with the way that gun violence has taken control of our city, a lot of these kids have nothing to do. So they need to survive. A lot of them have been suffering from food deprivation because of COVID-19. A lot of them may have disorders, say ADHD, but now they've been cooped up in their home for 15 months. So they're losing their minds as well. They can't handle it. They're losing their grip on reality. And lots of times, violence, gang membership, just taking from other people, they don't see it like we see it. Their mind doesn't work that way. We'll walk down the street and go, oh yeah, well, I only have $5 in my pocket, but I'm not going to take that lady's purse because I need another $10. They see it as, I don't have enough money to get whatever I need to get, so I'm going to take this lady's money, whatever, she can get some more money. And, so that's
and enter into a criminal behavior as a result. You mentioned a variety of different therapies. And I know that play therapy and talk therapy are part of it, but we had an interesting conversation around one of the, more effective therapies that, is the rapid eye movement, or electronic E. I mean, I don't want to do a disservice to that particular name, but can you share a little bit more? The rapid eye movement, yes.
Yes, so rapid eye movement therapy is used lots of times to reprogram your brain and how your brain works. So it's used sometimes, it's used also maybe with psychodynamic therapies or relaxation therapies. It examines your dreams. It looks at what triggers you. And what the clinicians who specialize in EDMR are trying to do is, through your eye movements, they can learn to assess when you're being triggered, what's going on in your brain, and they can teach you, okay, we're going to have a clean slate with your brain. We're going to redo this whole programming issue. And it's very successful in some people. In some people, as with any type of therapy, you just have to go with what you think based on the totality of their symptoms is going to work.
And, it's so important because, these are really critical techniques that are based and steeped in education and evidence-based work and studies. So clinical trials in terms of these health methodologies and modes of support. One of the subjects that's kind of taboo, because we're all Christian women, is praying our issues away. We've heard a lot about that and the church involvement. And, I'm not trying to go the opposite of heaven. I want to definitely go to heaven. So I don't want to say anything that would really disparage the ecumenical community. But the reality is that we need to have this conversation around what is appropriate within health ministries. Where's the liability? What's the skill set? Do we get into this habit of let's just pray it away? And, Yvette, I know you being, a leader in your church, and I'm a community committee member in mine, Vicki, what's the conversation that we have to have with ourselves and our families and our church, fellow church parishioners around how much do we rely and where do we draw that line between actual treatment and coming into those kind of counseling methodologies? And Yvette, I just have to, because I don't know if folks out there know that you are actually an ordained minister as well as an RN. So this is kind of, am I stepping into your toes? Am I stepping into your area? Am I going to be in trouble with my God? Is that something going to happen to me tomorrow?
Not at all. Not at
Okay.
all. But it's been a myth in the church way too long, thinking we could pray everything away. You know, God heals through medicine, and he always has. Luke was a physician, and Luke took his bag everywhere they went as a disciple. We don't talk about that. That means that Jesus relied on Luke's medical knowledge back then, which we carry now, being mentally and physically. So yes, we cannot pray these things away. And Vicki, thank you for bringing that out, because we cause more trauma, I believe, and Vicki can correct me if I'm wrong, by throwing somebody on the altar, and we're going to pray here till that demon comes out of you that's making you act that way, when some people simply have valid mental challenges. Am I correct, Vicki?
You are. It's interesting because I have said this in the past. A lot of my peers criticized me when I chose to go to Liberty University to get my PhD. And they were like, oh, why would you go there? And they're a Christian college and they're fundamentalists. I chose it because I felt there needs to be some form of spirituality when we're helping these populations that's missing. But I think we have to be cautious, because what often happens to people in the church is they go to their church leaders for help and they are instantly condemned. So a large part of our population, especially the LGBTQ plus population, has that happen to them a lot. So, God is against homosexuality. Okay, but you're talking to a group of people, especially young people, who have some of the highest suicide rates in this country, who have some of the highest assault rates committed against them in this country. So as a church leader, first and foremost, God says you need to lead with compassion. So if you don't have the capacity to be compassionate for someone who is believes they're a different sexuality, or if you don't have compassion for someone who has done drugs, because the church will shun you if you've been a prostitute or you've been a heroin addict, or if you've been incarcerated. The church has a habit of shunning you. But I do think there is a tide of younger ministers and other church persons who understand that you have to lead with compassion first. Listen, everybody could go to church every Sunday and everybody's not going to agree on everything the Bible says or how to interpret what the Bible says. And people, you'll have people that disagree whether water tastes the same. But the bottom line is, if you have someone that's coming to you in the church and they're struggling with something, you have to embrace them. You have to lead with compassion and lead with sensitivity, and, find passages in the Bible that will help them get to where they need to go. And listen, a lot of people are not going to respond to scripture quoting to them. So let's teach them how to meditate. Let's teach them how to get in touch with their inner being so that they can then get in touch with their spirituality. And so I think there's a big difference in religion and spirituality. There's a huge difference. But I definitely think that any professional that goes into the counseling field at all, whether they be a Christian minister, a layman, any type of professional, needs to lead with compassion, because otherwise you're doing more harm and causing additional trauma. And people understand that.
Yeah, and I would add to that is that the ministries that are in charge of those types of programs, the counseling or health ministries, to have those professionals who are in the secular world that can make that bridge and take that compassionate and spirituality part, and then resource them into the community network of health providers in that regard. You know, we're getting to the bottom of the hour, and this part went by so fast, and it was so rich with information. I want to make sure that our listening and viewing audience has a way to reach you, because I know that you're an expert trainer in this field, and I know that you've got some resources, because we talk about anyone listening who intently and need these types of resources. We want to make sure that we get it into their ears, or they have an opportunity to write them down. So can you provide a way that individuals can reach you for the kind of training that you do in this field, as well as any resources that you think would be helpful for members of our listening and viewing audience as we wrap up in just a few minutes here?
So you can email me at sdlinc1@gmail.com. I also have a website, which is www.sdlinc.com. And as well, I am doing I do training throughout the community. I will be starting some training at Deanwood, which is in DC, in July, workforce development training. And so you can come see me. I'll be doing that there. But in DC, the Department of Mental Health has an emergency response team. And if you dial 911 or 311 and tell them you're having a mental health crisis, they will come to you. In addition, Maryland also has the same. So when you contact the Maryland Mental Health Department, they also have a emergency response team. Both Maryland and DC have 24-hour mental health facilities where you can go and get help. Reach out to your local. I have a son that's a fireman. Reach out to your firemen and EMS people. Reach out to police officers. Listen, all police are not bad. So sometimes you need to get them involved. If a person is in your home, let's say tearing up your home because they're having a really bad breakdown or a mental break, you're going to need that help. So
well, we thank you. You know, that's very good. And I like the part of all police are not bad, because they can be your community bridge to getting the support and help that you need. Dial 911 or 311 in your community or your local emergency system if you're having a health or trauma crises. And so we thank you, Miss Vicki Braxton, President and CEO of Sons and Daughters of Lowe's Island Incorporated, for being with us today.
I
Yes,
appreciate
absolutely.
it very much.
Absolutely. Looking forward to having you back on the Marketplace Show Reset. Coming up next, we have a special rebroadcast paying tribute, remembering the man, the vision, the legacy of the late Dr. Roy Hastick, the founder and president of the Caribbean American Chamber of Commerce and Industry of New York. Unfortunately, Dr. Roy Hastick passed June 2020. He passed due to COVID-19, but he left an incredible legacy behind in New York. I had the opportunity. You will share a rare interview that I've had with him. He was not only my friend, my colleague, but he was also my mentor. We traveled the Caribbean together. When I got indoctrinated into the New York tapestry of ethnicity, and Caribbean being one of them, he was the person that helped guide me through the Caribbean business community. Learned a lot from him. So coming up next on segment number 2 on business, economy, and public policy is a special interview rebroadcast, remembering the man and the vision, Dr. Roy Hastick. Ladies, have a good day. We'll talk soon. Looking forward to having you back on the program.
You do the same, Anthony.